Hey, it's Brett. So, names are interesting. There's the classic line, "What's in a name?" and all similar pontifications. But nowadays, we get to see a whole different side where it is clearly demonstrated and reproducible that the connotations, associations, and even down to like word sound and guttural consonants versus all these little factors play into the psychology of what a word feels like, especially in a given context and in light of other words there. But Joe Rogan was putting it as, that a name is, it's like, what sound do I make out of my mouth to get your attention and know I'm talking to you? It's an interesting concept. Well, names never really feel quite right to me. There's a lot of different factors there, but it's interesting how strongly tied a legacy is to a name. Like Einstein. You have last name Einstein, everyone's going to automatically compare you to the most famous one. Or presumably Hitler and Hussein. It's probably pretty hard to get out of such big shadows. There's interesting trends in like the Bible and all sorts of other places among the way the cultures handle their generations and their naming. And there's definitely a case to be made for, a unified theology as laid out explicitly in pretty much any of a number of religious texts. Because if you fully believe any one religion that has a omnipotent deity, then you have to believe that any sort of divine truth anywhere outside of that religion is still part of the world that that deity commands, controls, and created. So it feels ridiculously presumptuous to say that you know what all God does. On the atheist side of things, it's a flat cop-out to just chalk things up to God without trying to understand why. Like, if God made the universe, then he wouldn't need to break his own rules because he would have a perfect design. So maybe people should go back and reevaluate their understanding of what their own God is and how he would function, she, it, whatever it is, how that God would function in reality. Because it's all fine and well to have, theories about how the tooth fairy works if you know, the end game there. So to treat your own beliefs about an omniscient and omnipotent ruler of your eternal afterlife, I feel like the only options are to completely believe or completely refuse. This middle ground stuff just end up landing on a fence. Because when you see these people that, I mean, pet peeves aside, the way that they handle their own religions, which in most cases that I personally interact with, that's Christianity, my own religion. It's like having a bunch of idiot cousins. You love them, but just wish they'd shut up sometimes. Maybe listen to their own words. So many people just have their own delusion, have their own cherry-picked set of beliefs that generally aren't even consistent with themselves. And you end up treating God like the tooth fairy in the same breath as saying that all glory to Him. Makes me wonder if people understand what glory or love or any of these concepts come out of their mouth. Have any idea what they are. But if people thought about what they did and what they said, the world would have already been a drastically different place. There are some interesting observations made anthropologically and paleosociologically of naming conventions and linguistic constructions and all this. And it's interesting to see how strongly a difference the name that a people is called affects their legacy, and especially when it's all the descendants of one person. Well, that is kind of that person's de facto legacy. Problem comes when, us being humans, and up until pretty much now, there was no way to store even a large enough fragment of someone's personality outside of mythic stories. And the question is whether those stories can be crafted in such a way, like really old school stereoscopic images, like hand-drawn pencil sketches that can give a very realistic 3D impression, at least animation and all sorts of other tricks. There's tons there to discuss, so I'll stop now before I ramble off a cliff.